And the second part of the story shows how James Connolly reacts to the World War and how the Irish Citizen Army is inexorably led into insurrection against the British government. Even before the outbreak of war, it seems that armed rebellion is in any event going to break out in Ireland. The Northern Unionists, led by Carson, gathered an amateur army to prevent Home Rule. This is responded to by the Nationalists with their own volunteers who would fight to defend Home Rule. Both groups seek arms from Germany. Connolly and Larkin, for the Irish Citizen Army, maintain an uneasy relationship with the National Volunteers, which is emphatically not a working class outfit. Sean O'Casey, the Secretary of the Citizen Army, wants no such relationship. The Countess Markovitz wishes to intensify it. The rifles ordered by the National Volunteers create a crisis in Dublin. British soldiers open fire on the crowd and kill 3 citizens. Very nearly simultaneously, a Serbian assassin kills an Austrian Archduke in Sarajevo, setting off the international crisis. Connolly is sure that the united working classes of Europe will take action to prevent war, but this does not happen. The British government, under Liberal Prime Minister Asquith, puts its promise of Irish Home Rule on hold, pending the end of the war. Redmond, the Irish national leader, promises Irish support for the war so long as Home Rule is guaranteed. Most of the National Volunteers support Redmond. Connolly and the Citizen Army move closer toward those who do not. The funeral of the old rebel O'Donovan Rossa brings Connolly into contact with Pádraig Pearse, who is the leader of those who do not. Pearse asks Connolly to join him in his plans for a rising. In despair at the condition of labour and the state of the war, Connolly agrees. He can see no other way to the socialist revolution that he's dreamed of all his life. There is a great deal of muddle, and at last, on Easter Monday 1916, the rising takes place. It is defeated. Pearse, Connolly, and most of the other commanders are shot.
1914, and in Dublin, has there been, must we say, that we have seen the great strike and the locking out through all this winter we have fought? Immeasurable defeat?
No, we can measure it.
Measure it. And assess how far the murderous frost bite upon the life of the working class, from the black and yellow withered leaf has worried downwards to the earthbound root.
Not to the roots. Not quite. The members of our union go back to work, having apparently achieved nothing. Connolly can hardly lift his head. For Larkin, nothing left but to go flats upon his bed. God in all of me life, before I never felt so bloody mad. I'm not well.
Here is hell. 2 men. 4 years they have both worked together, admiring, destructing, respecting, resenting one another. And now at the last, between them, hardly one word of good grace. Good God, in the whole of my life I never felt of so little damned use.
What did the Kaiser say to the Emperor of Austria last week? He said that general war must cover Europe. Now, within a year, who will be the master? Who will be the man? And once this drum has thundered.
The cry of the oppressed nations, Hungary, Slovakia, Poland, Bohemia, Serbia, Ireland, India, Arabia. Let us out! Let us out! Let us out, and we will tear our swallowed lives from your black throat. The cry of the controlling nations, Germany, Russia, Britain, Austria, Turkey, France. We looked for our good luck and took our chance and took our vantage where we found it best. Leave us alone. Leave us alone. Leave us alone. Leave us alone with all the wealth that we have won, or we will break your back and bone. The cry of the neutral nations. We are standing on the sidewalk of the world. We are standing and we damn well don't want to mix in. If we want to have it made in dollars and trade, we gotta wait and see who will win.
A statement from the revolutionist V.I. Lenin. At innumerable socialist conferences, notably Stuttgart in 1907 and Basel in 1912, resolutions were passed proclaiming that no interest of the people can serve to justify wars waged for the sake of profits, the ambitions of dynasties, the power of the ruling class.
Oh, it's so easy to speak when you're not there and you have no power. So desirable to declare anything when not a soul knows who you are. We've got to get some work done. This union cannot be run by sitting down like an old hen and giving way to moan and groan.
As always, the capitalist newspapers are foreseeing some sort of war. She, Skeffington, says, whose war? For what reason?
Oh, it's anybody's war, Countess. Opinions differ as to the area in which it will break out.
Well, Skeffy says it doesn't matter a damn what area. He shall conscientiously object. I said, Skeffy, you're a crank. But if England is involved, it is Ireland's opportunity when England is in difficulty. And Skeffy says, what's a crank? England doesn't matter. A crank is a small arm that produces revolutions.
The voice of the British aristocracy. So long as the Liberals, in coalition with Labour, continue to usurp the proper government of this country, we are all on the road to ruin. I am well aware of it, my dear, but constitutionally we have no power. The Constitution is already destroyed. First the reforms of the Lord, and now Home Rule for Ireland. If Ireland is let go, then what about India, our jewel in the crown? Why wouldn't we form in Ulster a military base for the invasion of England and put paid to the whole damned farce with the rattle of a Maxim gun? Carson's people will assuredly lend a hand, crush the Catholics and Larkin's anarchism, and the whole of Ireland will be theirs. Isn't that what Carson wants? And certainly what we want at last. The revolution, the real revolution. Get back into our own hands of all the power that we ever lost since the plebs chopped off the head of King Charles I.
The class war having been diverted into a constitutional riddle-me-ree, the Irish have no choice but to attempt to agree with the rules of the Tory game and to muster to defend the integrity of the Constitution, if need be, to the bitter end.
Draw back the curtains and reveal the National Volunteers at Drill.
Because Carson has threatened force. The national answer is far worse, good God. The bold brag of the so-sheltered middle class when the green flag braves the orange flag. Oh, sure, it's better than a play. Do we want to get these pamphlets checked, or do we sit here all day?
Nevertheless, I'm going to talk to Tom Clark and the volunteers. The Citizen Army have asked me to ask you to obtain tickets for their participation at Bodenstown.
I've had more than a deal of trouble with them ruffians of that crowd over the wages I paid out in the course of my business. And by God, I do not forget the riots and the ructions they were created for.
And the Irishmen, the Citizen Army, and damn good ones. If they want to come to Bodenstown, of course they'll come. And welcome.
Who the devil is that? Would this be the start of a split?
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I'm glad that you at least recognise that Wolfe Tone stood for the men of no property.
Behind the face of this and that bold volunteer, a pair of hidden eyes will switch and peer. 2 candles through a tiny midnight hole in what you swore by day to be a solid wall.
There's a man came to see me in my tobacco shop this morning, an arms dealer out of Germany. Now he says that he knows that an individual in Hamburg who is involved in, shall we call it...
the arms trade? The umbrella trade?
Umbrellas? Good, good.
This agency in Hamburg has apparently received inquiries from a certain collector whose warehouse is situated not 150 kilometres from here.
Belfast.
Shh. If the Ulster Loyalists have indeed ordered rifles out of Germany, we have no time to waste. Thank you, my friend. We also want umbrellas, and we want them at a fair price. There are persons that your associate would already have been in touch with. Let him keep to his contact. It is as well you should not attempt to see me any further.
Throw back the curtain and reveal the citizen army at its drill.
Now, we are an organisation trained to arms of the Irish working class.
Partition! What does it mean to you? As a disciplined force of the labour movement in this country, I will tell you what partition means. It would not only divide the country, but the entire working class will be cut into 2 halves that can never again be joined together.
Well, neither home rule nor the lack of home rule will make us lay down our arms.
Mr. Connolly, we haven't got any.
Not yet, not yet. Madam Margaret, with your assistance, we shall be able to have a defined constitution, and upon that we can build for anything.
These are some of the headings we've already read. 1. The first and last principle of the Irish citizen army is the avowal that the ownership of Ireland, moral and material, is vested of right in the people of Ireland. 2. The Irish citizen army shall stand for the absolute unity of Irish nationality and nationhood.
Let's add to it this, that we support the rights and liberties of the democracies of all nations.
3. We sink all differences of birth, property and creed under the common name of the Irish people. 4. The citizen army shall be open to all who accept the principle of equal rights and opportunity for the Irish people.
And let me add, 5. Before being enrolled, every applicant for the citizen army must, if eligible, be a member of his trade union, such union being recognised by the Irish Trade Union Congress.
I think we roused their sunken fire at last.
I wish to God I thought that march would carry to Belfast. The way things are up there, there's no place for proletarian feet in common step. I think all the work we ever did in the union in that city has been chopped into kindling splinters.
No remedy, I must go back there. Oh, and I've had a letter of resignation from Sheehy Skeffington. I can't bear to read it. Countess, please read it for me.
Jim, there was a remark passed about not having guns, and you said, not yet. I offered myself vice chairman of this army because I thought its purpose was the defence of unarmed working men against blacklegs and police who had truncheons and gun. Jim, I did not mean to resist partition with the threat of the shedding of blood. This is a new citizens' army, not mine. And I resign. Signed, Francis Sheehy Skeffington.
So he goes. So do you, Belfast. Well, it's your proper territory. What about Dublin?
I presume you take charge of the union here?
Oh, sure. Take charge, yes. With what money? We have no money! The only place to get some money is, as ever, in America. Bill Haywood has promised that he will organise for me a speaking tour. In a matter of a few months, I should be able to earn...
For a lad. For a lad. For a lad. Gentlemen, I think we should stand. No, all right, I'll stand on my own. In Downing Street, the windows weep red tears of blood on brick and plaster. Asquith Prime Minister within his scarlet curtained room must creep on slippered feet from desk load of disaster. To dispatch box full of doom to letters laden down, with a month-long lack of sleep to newspapers that smoke and curl and smoulder in his hand and fall in ashes on his 10 times trodden carpet. Prime Minister, as leader of the opposition, the Conservative opposition, I have come to inform you that the present situation admits, in my opinion, of but one solution. You must at once drop this unworkable notion of the coercion of Ulster.
In order to prevent the possibility of the spread of mutual violence, the army will not be moved into the province of Ulster. Take the navy away too. Ask the Secretary of War to resign. Ah, Mr. Richmond wants to know if the ship of state is about to tack. Well, there's an absolutely unanimous demand from all quarters that governments at once withdraw the proclamation prohibiting the import of arms into Ireland. 20,000 rifles have been unloaded at Larne. 130,000 rifles are required in Dublin now. This is a mockery of the law to permit lethal weapons to be put into the hands of an irregular force. Perhaps I'll make it regular.
Sir Edward Carson will never accept partition. Complete union of all Ireland with Great Britain or nothing. No surrender. In Sarajevo, here is the gun. In Sarajevo, here is the man. Connect the two together and then wait. The Archduke's car will also wait at the station for the Archduke's train.
Asquith will cheat, Asquith always cheats. We bring in our guns, let them stand and deliver. I have the message from Dublin, from Germany. Childers has got hold of 1,500 rifles and...
Good God, is that all?
That's all. Would you send them back? He brings them into Holt on the 25th.
In Belfast, I, James Connolly, my ears filled with the tramp of soldiers, reconstructing weary carefulness the rubble and broken boulders of my union.
In Dublin County, at the Pier of Hope, they gather waiting for the boat. The boat comes in, the guns are handed out. The sober Sunday, broken with a shout. I insist that these weapons, which are illegal, must be surrendered.
At the same time, the same place as the 20,000 rifles which were brought in last month for the Ulster Loyalist volunteers at Larne. Please be so good as to permit us to continue our legal and recreative Sunday afternoon march. So, we marched on down to Dublin town, and the column grew small, and smaller yet. The police spread out, and they thronged all about, and they called for the soldiers to spread the net.
King's Own Scottish borderers, load your rifles. Assume a grim demeanour. And so we marched to Bachelor's Walk. The crowd around began to talk. Began to talk, began to sing, until we came to the river's brim. The crowd around began to roar at the soldiers, who could march no more. If you're jammed up tight against the wall, and if you have no choice but to fight or fall, and a loaded gun is in your hand, how long in patience would you stand?
3 were killed, and 30 hurt, and the rest ran away through the Dublin dirt. They have shot and they have killed, and the promise of their uniform has been fulfilled.
For the freedom of Serbia! Death to the Archduke!
He has shot and he has killed, and the promise of his brotherhood has been fulfilled. August 1914, the greatest war the world has ever seen.
I am confident that the international socialist movement will unite throughout Europe to prevent inconceivable holocaust.
Sir Edward Carson, speaking for each Ulster Loyalist volunteer, desires at once to make it clear that to a man we'll fight the German war provided that Home Rule at once is dropped.
The bill is passed. It cannot be revoked. Postponed, perhaps. After the war, Home Rule confirmed. But what about partition? Assuredly that condition would no longer be of account. This is a people's war. The well-being of all people must alone be paramount. The Irish are men of principle. I want a statement of principle that we are involved in a foreign war on account of Belgium, Catholic Belgium. Now, that would be the principle of the right of self-determination for small neutral nations. It wouldn't be altogether out of place to apply it locally. Home Rule after the war. Let Redmond make his speech. Goodbye. The volunteers will defend the coasts of their own country against all enemies of the British Empire. Now, how do you think the Irish newspapers are going to take that?
The Irish Worker, the only newspaper of which I am prepared to speak, will take it as all capitalist hysteria is to be took. Ruling by fooling, we write, is a great British art, with great Irish fools to practice it on. The signal for war should have been the signal for rebellion, and the National Volunteers should have been the first to respond to it, instead of which
they split. For Redmond and his proposal to devote the volunteers to the defence of the British Empire, 188,000 have offered themselves. Myself, Owen MacNeill, opposing this decision, received support from no more than 12,000. We are a constitutional, national-minded, responsible body, Mr. Connolly, devoted only to the integrity and freedom of our beloved country. If I take you aright, sir, you are expecting us to foster some sort of repetition of last year's industrial violence. The very function of these volunteers is to prevent such an outrage. We want nothing to do with your divisive ideology, sir.
Mr. MacNeill, if you do not look for revolution, just why do we remain here in arms?
I conceive, Mr. Pearce, that when the British Imperial War is ended, our undiluted power will be required to remind Westminster of their promise about Home Rule and our own aspiration towards an entire republic.
The war, the war. Now forward to the war and reap the reward of glory.
Don't join the British Army! Don't join the British Army! Don't join the British Army!
The British Army! I'm going to write my pamphlets, write my leaflets, write my newspaper, write my book in Belfast, like a helpless gudgeon entangled squirmy on the hook.
We keep well away from that man Connolly. Except in a generous sense, he might be useful for propaganda. Sure, there's no harm in joining vices with him in opposition to recruitment. We talk to nobody. However much we believe they are sympathetic to our intention, we hold no public meetings, publish no Jacobin pamphlets, salute no revolutionists in any foreign country. We can, of course, declare that we're opposed to the war. If Connolly or Griffith or MacNeill should desire to say so, we say it too. But afterwards, not before. The Brotherhood must not appear to be leading towards anything.
Marooned in Belfast, I cannot expect the Brotherhood to treat me with respect. No question now, in Dublin town alone I can find out what the hell goes on. The war goes on. Month after month, the citizen army sits as still as any stone. Dublin, and no other place I must force forward. My red, swollen face.
I've tried so hard and done my best to keep all contacts wide and open. But with Larkin sick and Connolly away, are they all asleep and can't be woken? I put it to you. Are you all asleep? Here. Or what are you? This war might be over in a matter of weeks, and your treaty made with the Germans from the citizen army. Not one move to even let the world know we exist.
There's a practical, formal question to be put before this meeting. How far are we going to continue our attempts to associate ourselves with the independent volunteers under Ian the Canoe?
Our Secretary Shauna Casey has sent in a written resolution bearing on this. Would you read it, Madam Markovich, please?
It concerns Madam Markovich, me, through her membership of the women's section of the independent volunteers. Now the volunteers in their efforts and aims are inimical to the interest of labour. I move that she be now asked to sever her connection with either the volunteers or the citizen army. And he wants the resolution put to a vote.
He can wait till we put another one. Vote with confidence in Madam Markovitz and her integrity in all the work she's done for the furtherance of this body.
And of the women's section of the volunteers. The women's section, none so fitted to break the chains as those who wear them, none so well equipped to decide what is a fetter. If in its passion for freedom the women's army forges ahead of the militant army of labour, all we can do is to cheer all the louder. And the vote of confidence is carried by 7 votes to 6. And Sean O'Casey says if he doesn't win it, he resigns, so he resigns, and that's it. I at a time that makes to strike yourself rigid on an issue of no compromise. And this isn't it. From one end of Europe to the other, Labour and the Socialists are compromising with the war. And anyone who refuses to do that is on my side, nowhere else. Whoever is not willing to go along with this policy should resign, like Sean O'Casey. Well, so, from now on, a continued and intense preoccupation with our military training and proficiency as the defence force of the working class. Oh, there's another matter. The Redmond's volunteers have a whole shed full of good rifles at the north end of Amiens Street Station. Get hold of as many railway men as you have in your company and see what you can do about a crafty infiltration of the yard after dark. They'll end a good practice where you get along with you, do it.
But what we want to know is this. Is it true you've been signing political statements on the same paper as Arthur Griffith? Arthur Griffith supported Murphy and the employers in the lockout. Have we forgotten? And
now he's involved in a campaign for Irish neutrality, which neither affirms socialism nor denies it. But in the present state of affairs, it can only be described as a revolutionary posture. Very well, so I go along with it, because I am a socialist, and I therefore must affirm that in this one particular Arthur Griffith is correct. In token of which, Winifred, do you have that new banner prepared? I want it up across the frontage of Liberty Hall now.
We stand for neither king nor Kaiser, but Ireland.
Aye, and supposing it did prove possible to pull Ireland out of this war, and it turned out in the upshot that our movement had played no part in it.
Supposing it did prove possible to proclaim a republic, and it turned out in the upshot that we had had no part in it?
On his present form, of course, Arthur Griffith would have played no part either.
That is exactly what we are calculating upon.
Sure, a slogan is one thing, but republicanism, secret societies, Boy Scout passwords in the night.
Declarations of redundancy of 1/3 of the unskilled labour employed by the Dublin employers. Let them be told, if they join the army, their wives will be compensated with the government allowance.
Well, what have we left to counteract the economic bloody fact? The Transport Union must support all strike or stoppage of any sort. A general meeting now at Liberty Hall. Miss Carney, let's have a look at the books. William, I want an opinion on the overall viability of each individual branch. Jim, can we have your views of the,
Insanity beyond measure. There's an attempt now to start strike upon strike with no money in the bank. Our only hope, I told you, America. I must go to America to see what I can raise for us there. Why New York to get me home again the day McNeil after Griffith and inaugurate the government of the Irish Greengrocers Republic.
Soldiers of the Citizen Army, at the salute to honour this funeral, we honour the memory of O'Donovan Rossa, who fought for his cause in Ireland, was imprisoned in England and died in exile in America. Karl Marx spoke loudly for him against his tormentors in the jail, and we are here by our right of our faith in the separate destiny of our country and our faith in the ability of Irish workers to achieve that destiny.
They think they have foreseen everything. They think they have provided for everything. But the fools, the fools, the fools, they have left us our Fenian dead, and while Ireland holds these graves, Ireland unfree can never be at peace.
In order to provide for 6 children in a small dark flat, Lily Connolly must take in washing, mending clothes, and that's that.
You see the slave of a slave taking orders from her boss so that his boss may be toppled with the minimum of loss. Very well. I am a man who will hazard his whole life and those of his friends because he knows his wife has got from him alive such little good. Very well, perhaps I do shed blood, perhaps I do make war for no one else but her. What's wrong with that? She is a legion. I can't count how many of her there are. And what they want I do not know how to explain, but I do know that to do nothing will do nothing to relieve their pain. Mr. Pierce, shall we have a word?
You have made up your mind. You will come with us in the rising.
If you want us, you must meet our terms. We, as the Citizen Army, created for our own purpose and independent of the National Volunteers, must continue to retain our independence, our chain of command, our own commandant.
You?
I become, in effect, the second in command of the entire operation.
Are you willing to be inducted into the Irish Republican Brotherhood?
I am not. We are public people in the labour movement. We are accustomed to declare ourselves. I must know that no one under me in your chain of command is in fact my concealed superior.
But you see, we take an oath.
For security, yes. It is prudent because you answer democratically to no one.
Except our conscience. Leaders of Labour are as corruptible as the rest of us.
If so, they are no longer the leaders of Labour.
The very materialist basis of this business they conduct.
To be sure, there's no idealism. We just rescue human beings from being turned into animals. In what name do we raise our flag on Easter Sunday?
What else but the name of the Republic of Ireland to be defined in a proclamation?
May I ask you your collective views upon the issue of private property?
I fancy I know yours.
We want and we must have economic conscription in Ireland, socialism, common ownership of the resources of the land under one common direction, that Ireland may live and bear upon her fruitful bosom the greatest number of the freest people she has ever known.
This could cause difficulties.
Now, you...
I have my views upon James Fintan Lawler.
Very good, so do I, but interpreted how?
4 propositions. 1, the end and purpose of freedom is human happiness. 2, the end and purpose of national freedom is individual freedom, therefore individual happiness. 3, national freedom implies national sovereignty. 4, national sovereignty implies control of all the moral and material resources of the nation. Not really so very different from what you said.
Oh, yes, it is. Your word nation includes all, excludes none. We can support ourselves, said Wolfe Tone, by the aid of that numerous and respectable class of the community, the men of noble. Merchants, said Wolfe Tone, make bad revolutionaries. Company directors, says James Connolly, turn government into mass murder, religion into a confidence trick, and nationality into an increased margin of profit upon their books.
Bravo.
Don't you see, if you once permit their way of life its very existence, it will continue to amass power, and there will be nothing for anyone else at the servitude of that power.
Class conflict within a nation is more destructive than anything else.
Class conflict is inevitable until the nation itself agrees to put it out of the law by making outlaws of all exploiters. There's no compromise.
Would you accept a declaration of the right of the Irish people to the ownership of Ireland?
And then what do we say about the Protestant North?
A specific guarantee of political and religious freedom.
I wonder, will they believe it?
Well, we shall win through, Mr. Connolly, and those of us who shall survive will come into great joy. I think we shall come into great joy even if we do not survive. I have turned my face to this road before me, to the dead that I see and the death I shall see.
Oro sheda bahawalya, oro sheda bahawalya, oro sheda bahawalya, Alisher Houghton's Valley. Sheda bahavan valenver, they are grach who vetting even, the go he vra the shell of Merlach, to deal to Leshner Olive. Oro sheda bahawalya, oro sheda bahawalya, oro sheda bahawalya, Alisher Houghton's Valley. A wheel arena barkle Beckham, Murmine bio in the year of Shafton, Grania Whale is Mila Vashkiach, a forward faner Olive. Oro sheda bahawalya, oro sheda bahawalya, oro sheda bahawalya, Alisher Houghton's Valley.
I myself am not determined upon death. The plans of these people have a basis of practicality, my concern to substantiate it.
In the name of God, where have you been?
Considering, among other things, the continuation of the current dock strike.
Jim, I cannot believe that Pierce and Tom Clark kept you all this length of time talking about your plans for a strike.
No, they didn't. But I want every convener, every shop steward alerted to the immediate probability of a particular drastic action on the industrial front.
Are we waiting for some sort of signal? Of what? There's a class of prophetical vagueness about this which I must say I don't appreciate.
Constance, when the time comes to declare to the movement just where we all are, they will know it has come and their purpose will be quite clear.
To me, already clear as the new moon, so suddenly exalting her bright horn above the water of the mountain lake, white and alive. At once, where all was dark and cold, you look to me as though you had been drinking wine, red wine for blood. Did Pierce project on you his mad, sweet mood of naked, flower-crowned sacrifice? James, have you set the date? James, is it Easter?
And how did you discover?
With a man like Porrick Pierce, what other possible feast?
No, too much poetry. It didn't go at all like that. But the great powers are war-weary, and a negotiated peace immediately after an Irish revolt would tip the scale against Britain in their haggling with Berlin. An Irish provisional revolutionary government, however tenuous, however impotent, by the very fact that it existed,
would have to be recognized, because the Germans would have supported it, and the Germans would insist.
So as you see, all this talk from Porrick Pierce about blood sacrifice is in fact quite irrelevant. By joining for our own cause in the war at this time, with the uninvolved proletariat at last, thank God, aroused by the bloody mindedness of William Martin Murphy, we can conclude the entire conflict. And unhindered we can set forward for the socialist revolution. The line is drawn upon the ground, the arched feet poised to take the running leap, the whole world changed into a quite new size and shape, and I myself must now put on a change of shape at every turn. Where's my daughter? Where's Nora? Liam Mellows, are you there? In the meanwhile, into this basement, every cartridge, every gun, every document that gives a hint we are no longer on our own. Today we lock the door between the office and the stair.
That's prudent. But this green flag...
Oh, that's for the roof, for the open air. A flag states an attitude, but the document betrays a plot. But I've never been ashamed of any attitude yet.
I'm the wife of a docker. We're out on strike, and we won't go back. The Transport Union has given us support in all our struggle for a living wage. The strike pay, though it's very small indeed, I think we'd be damn fools to engage on Easter Sunday in Jim Connolly's deed of blood. And as it is, our 6 young kids have barely got a bite of food. And yet, if we refuse to march, we leave Jim Connolly in the lurch. And I believe if we leave him, it's ourselves are left to sink or swim. So, sure, there's no future in this country, but that which the short, squat Jim, day in and day out, in rain or snow, has told us the only way to go. 'Tis us or Murphy. And by God, rather than Martin Murphy, we'll lie dead beneath the sod.
Mr. Pearce, Mr. Pearce, I am informed I have been deceived. You intend on Easter Sunday to engage in physical force, sir. I demand an explanation.
Mr. McNeil, would you read this and then tell me what you think of it?
It appears to be an official order emanating from Dublin Castle and arranging for the arrest of every nationalist in the country.
Including yourself and including the Archbishop. Under the circumstances, sir, do you suppose that we have any choice but to fight?
Mr. Pearce, this news is devastating. I had been so confident all this time that the passive existence of the volunteers would of itself be sufficient reminder to the British that their pledge of home rule at the end of the war and so on. Mr. Pearce, we must make a plan.
Casement is caught. The German ship that brought the guns is caught and scuttled. The whole of our plans are baffled.
Not at all. We carry on.
How can a serious-minded God, how can a serious-minded Gael like Patrick Pearce become so double-faced? This document is forged. A second time they have deceived MacNeil. I must make haste.
In my newspaper, The Independent, this statement forthwith is placed. Owing to the very critical situation, all orders given to the Irish volunteers for Easter Sunday are hereby rescinded, and no parades, marches, or other movement of volunteers will be commenced on that day.
Mr. Connolly, I assure you, I knew nothing of this.
Mr. Pearce, we do not purchase Murphy's papers in Liberty Hall. So what you did not know, we are still unaware. And moreover, we have our orders. Constance, Winifred, mobilization 3:30.
Tell me,
Yes?
is Arthur Griffith going to be in your provisional government, if that's what you want to install?
Oh, it's not possible just yet, Constance, to make sure it'll be a Labour government. But at least it'll be Republican.
There's a whole rack of rifles there. They haven't been cleaned for a week. We've got 10 minutes.
Mr. Connolly, we can't do it. Not today. Do have some sense. You must cancel your order.
Oh no! This is the last time in this history and in the work of my life the bourgeoisie will make a haystack out of every single hope.
The
troops of Labour march out to revolt. You come or you stay behind, you make up your own mind. Today the working class will fight without 10,000 faint-heart friends to punctuate our statement with their if and but. Soldiers, are you ready?
You must give us time to cancel the cancellation of our orders, Mr. Connolly.
But you can't do it.
By tomorrow.
Work, Mr. Pierce, you have lost your volunteers.
Mr. Connolly, I believe that you want to have them to have lost. You desire to be betrayed by the idealists, by the mystics. Well, I won't let you. You are with us, and we, such as we are with you, Mr. Connolly.
Oh, the fallible betrayed humanity of careful, international, theoretical James Connolly. And yet who could do other than call a man like this his brother? Postponement for 1 day, is it practical? That's all.
Just.
Then it's agreed.
In the meantime, the proclamation.
You'll find a printing press over there. There are 3 paid-up members of the Dublin Typographical Society ready to set the type. Citizen Army. Now here you come here. Whatever happens tomorrow, hold on to your rifles. Those with whom we are fighting may stop before our goal is reached. Remember, we are out for economic as well as political liberty.
In Belfast, on Holy Thursday, the 26th anniversary of her marriage in Scotland to the Irish Revolutionary, Lily Connolly has been told by her daughter what is afoot. Lily Connolly has known 26 years that it would come. He doesn't think I'll stay in Belfast washing blankets in this small home. I would stand with him and his guns in Liberty Hall if I could. But someone must survive and tell his children what he did.
Out of the 5,000 who were predicted in the plan to invest Dublin, just over 1/10, maybe 600, maybe 7.
Absentees from the Citizen Army, I'm going to say negligible.
Army of the Irish Republic, attention, by the right turn, to the post office, quick march.
Would you mind? This post office is now my office for the Republican Revolution. I want all these fellas out of here and let Miss Carney and myself set up a headquarters. If you've nothing to do, then find something to do. Break the windows, block the openings, secure for yourselves loopholes. You, barricades in the adjacent streets. Well, isn't this glorious? We're in, and they've not stopped us.
What happens next?
Report at once upon the Irish news. Rumours are all I hear. I was informed by whom that nothing near as bad as this was to be feared. From who is it? Sinn Féin?
I think it's worse, Prime Minister. I think Berlin, with loads of German gold, has got the whole thing going. Not possible the nationalists, with all their booing, jeering, hooting in the streets, could ever hold themselves together long enough like men to get assembled such a foolproof plan. Our chaps are at the races. Filthy trick. So typical to stab them in the back. Prime Minister, the German High Seas Fleet has made attack upon the English East Coast ports. Diversion is schemed to draw support away from Ireland, where I have no doubt a full-scale landing will be carried out. The only way to put this rising down is to treat it like a total new campaign, as great as Flanders or the Hellespont. Dublin from now must be a first-class front for every weapon we can muster. Whole weapons must be seen, whole regiments must be sent. Lord Kitchener and the Tories all agree, surround the town, destroy it, by land and sea. HMS Helga is in a position in a tidal pool, and she is ready to open fire. Tell the captain, first of all, to blow the roof off Liberty Hall. Tell the captain after that the GPO must be laid flat. Tell the captain not to trouble if anywhere else gets turned to rubble. I have orders, sir, to lay the iron hand of ruthless chastisement upon this land. We told the Irish England had expected a certain duty from them. They defected, and they must bear the consequence alone. the face of what they call a famine queen. Today they shall find carved from a rock stone.
I am David Lloyd George, and my devious mind can wind and turn and twist and turn and wind. Each shell that falls on Dublin now will make an opportunity for me to take, when all is done and brought down to the end. A quick and clever man will have to send commissioners, diplomatists and such to fix some sort of settlement and patch the whole thing up again with eager sympathy for grief and pain. I do believe that I, of all Westminster, best will qualify. Good. Not only will I win the war, but Ireland too I'll solve forevermore.
Saturday. A red glare tells of fire. The rumour now grows that the post office is evacuated.
Too many civilians have been killed. It would be wrong to prolong it.
The rumour also grows that terms of surrender are presently being discussed.
I dream a dream that I have dreamed before. I am in prison by the fire, and in the fire there is no other way I can get out of here except to let the flames run over all, burning the floor, the window and the wall. And I am free, and all the bread is burnt to ash.
Mr. Connolly, the provisional government has agreed to an unconditional surrender.
Well, I agree to these conditions for the men under my command.
None of these men were magnetic in the sense that Mr. Larkin is magnetic. But if Larkin was the magnetic centre of the Irish Labour movement, Connolly was its brains.
Formality and a soldier's sword. Good Lord. Do you suppose this fella had the intention of invoking to me the Geneva Convention? Because, if so, in double quick time, I think he'd better think again. I'll have you know, you bloody little men, to rebel against your king is a matter of crime. I have the honour to proclaim a martial law in this wretched town. Trial before a drumhead court will serve you now both sweet and short. Read out the names, and I will call the sentences for one and all.
Patrick Pearse, Thomas MacDonough, Thomas Clark, Joseph Plunkett, Edward Daly, Michael O'Hanrahan, William Pearse.
Death. Carry on, boy. What are you waiting for?
John MacBride,
Death.
Edmund Kent, Michael Mallon,
Death.
Thomas Kent,
Death.
John Houston, Cornelius Colbert, John MacDermott.
No, wait a moment, General. Don't forget, this is a Liberal government that you serve. I would regret to have too many dead upon our record. Perhaps we should stop it now.
Prime Minister, would you wait, please, until my duty has been done? Just read those names again.
Out in the street, the people throng and rush and cry aloud, bread, bread, where is our food? This child destroys our life, they cry. It would not have been done had there been any other way. They'll never understand why I am here. They all forget I am an Irishman.
General, I would now, if I may, take advantage of this delay.
The man with the wounded leg is still alive. Let the worst of the ringleaders be dealt with as they deserve. I said, read those names again.
John Houston, Cornelius Colbert, John MacDermott, James Connolly.
Death.
The last one, sir. He's unable to stand.
Then shoot him sitting. Fasten him to his chair.
For nearly 30 years I tried to clear the world of those who now have had me tied into my chair and shut up till I died. They always claimed that they were here to stay. They did not ask us if they may. And altogether they asked so very few that when the fire and sword and fury flew at them in Russia, China, Cuba, Africa, Vietnam, and Palestine, and many another you might name, indeed once more in Ireland, my own home, they could not credit what it was they'd done, or what it was in Dublin we'd begun at Easter 1916. We were the first to roll away the stone from the leprous wall of the whitened tomb. We were the first to show the deep, dark hole within could be thrown open to the living sun. We were the first to feel their loaded gun that would prevent us doing it anymore, or so they hoped. We were the first. We shall not be the last. This was not history. It is not past.
Where, oh, where is our James Connolly? Where, oh, where is that gallant man? He's gone to organize the union, that working men might yet be free. And who'll be there to lead the van? Oh, who'll be there to lead the van? Who'll be there but our James Connolly, the hero of each working man, who carries high the burning flag, who carries high the burning flag. 'Tis our James Connolly, all pale and wounded, who carries high our burning flag. They carried him up to the jail. They carried him up to the jail, and they shot him down on a bright May morning, and quickly laid him in his gourd. We'll lay him down in yon green garden, with Union men on every side, and we swore we'd make a mighty union that would fill that gallant man with pride. Now all you noble Irishmen, come join with me for liberty, and we will forge a mighty weapon and smash the bonds of slavery. Fantastic experience. Thank you very much. Anything out of the play, just write a letter to Eamon O'Keefe on the whole business of what's happening in Israel and Palestine, which is that we want the removal of the special trading agreements that are with Israel. We want to boycott Israel. We want to get Shannon back, and we want Shell out to sea.